Peoples, top of the morning. It is Tuesday, January 2nd. Happy New Year's 2024. And I am here with your geopolitical news. Al Jazeera reports Israel says it will pull out thousands of troops from Gaza. Israel has come under pressure from its principal ally, the United States, to move to a more low intensity war. The Israeli government has announced that it will withdraw thousands of its soldiers from the besieged Gaza Strip in the first significant pullback of troops since the war there began in October. So now, look where we are. Look where we sit at today. So you did everything that you did in Gaza, the killing of innocent civilians, women, men, children, elderly, the bombing of their infrastructure, schools, hospitals, playgrounds, homes, apartment buildings. And so now the pressure has become so enormous that the United States, which I can only gather, is applying enormous amounts of pressure to Israel. Because once again, as I said, we are in an election year. And so the United States cannot afford to let this election slip away because they are standing on the right side of, on the wrong side of history. And so now you see the conversation being had about Israel withdrawing troops. And so this is of no surprise to me. With the tensions rising in the Red Sea with the Houthi rebels, I already knew that this was more than probable because it's what the United States does. They involve themselves in issues around the world. And when these issues get too thick, the United States will abandon you. This is the history of the United States of America. So it's not even up for debate. There's nothing to argue. In other geopolitical news, Al Jazeera reports Russian-Ukraine war live. Missiles, drones, bombers target Kyiv. So now I'm going to play a little bit of this video so we can get an update on what's going on between Russia and Ukraine right now.
Russian missile strikes on Ukraine's capital and other cities have killed at least one person and injured dozens more. Explosions were heard in Kyiv and the eastern city of Kharkiv. Targets in the south and west were also hit. Well, let's get more now from Asad Beg, who joins us live from Kyiv in Russia, once again hitting the heart of Ukraine. How extensive is this latest attack?
Well, it seems to be one of the largest attacks for a while now. They started in the early hours of the morning. The sounds of explosions rang out across the capital. We saw some of the anti-aircraft fire go up. We heard the explosions, but also what's significant is there have been some impacts in the capital. Now, the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, has said that several areas in the capital have been hit and people have been injured. The authorities here have urged people to stay in their shelters. In fact, actually, as we speak.
And so now they're saying that this attack happened in the heart of Ukraine. And as you can see from that map right there, Kyiv is almost dead center in Ukraine. So it's like I said to you guys before, and I hate to keep saying it because it sounds like, I'm choosing sides or I'm on the side of the Russians or I want to see the Ukrainians dead. And that's just not fact. That's just not true. but I do acknowledge the severe disadvantage of the Ukrainians. And so from the beginning of this situation, I really couldn't fathom why they would be fighting Russia, why they wouldn't try to work out some type of deal or some type of situation with Russia where they would not be invaded.
The air alert is still on, telling people to go to their shelters. Now, the second largest city, Kharkiv, the mayor there has said that there has been a massive attack and there have been targets hit in the center. We understand that there are some casualties there. The mayor of Kharkiv said that being outside is not safe. Urged people to stay in their shelters. Now, what's significant is that the capital here, Kyiv, tends to have the better air defenses, but they were working from the early hours of the morning, but the missile strikes still managed to get through. We understand that there are fire crews at several scenes. Now, from the authorities here, we only tend to hear when non-military targets are hit, so when civilian infrastructure is hit. They don't tell us when military targets are hit. But these attacks have been going on now since the 29th of December. But at least here in the capital, Kyiv, this has been one of the largest attacks that we have seen for a while. The buildings were shaking. We could see the flash of the explosions and the impacts taking place across the city.
Is it like you said?
So what is really happening? Is Russia intensifying its strikes, its attacks in Ukraine? Because if this is the deadliest attack that has been seen since around about the beginning of the war, then it should be clear that there is an escalation occurring. It should be clear that for whatever reason, Russia is deciding to escalate its attacks to make them larger on a larger scale. And so, if this is not a clear indication of tensions rising enormously, then I don't know what more you need.
This has been one of the largest attacks in recent times. What has been the reaction from residents there?
Well, people have been shocked. We haven't seen, in the morning, we tend to see people outside walking their dogs, but many people are in their shelters right now. We understand there are parts of the city without electricity and mobile connection. Like I said, generally, the Kyiv tends to have better air defenses, but this morning there have been sounds of explosions. There's been smoke rising into the air. There's been sounds of the sirens of the rescue services rushing to those sites to try and get to people that may have been affected. So this is one of the largest and most extensive strikes. And if I take you back to the 29th of December, where Russia struck targets across the country in what the authorities said was the most massive aerial assault since the early days of the war, and there seems to be no let-up in Russian airstrikes currently.
Okay, thanks so much for that update, Asad.
So, as he just said, there seems to be no let up. It seems as if Russia has decided to intensify its strikes, its attacks on Ukraine. And so, once again, the United States find themselves in a conflict, in a proxy war, and seems like they're probably going to abandon the Ukrainians, because this is what the United States does. And so if you pay attention to these different conflicts, you'll see in the beginning there's a overwhelming amount of support. And then halfway through, the support starts to dwindle. And then by the end of it, the United States is making ultimatums and they're backing out. And that's basically the end of the story. In other geopolitical news, Al Jazeera reports Kim Jong-un tells army to annihilate South Korea, U.S. if provoked. North Korean leader echoes earlier bellicose rhetoric after promising to launch new satellites and further expand arsenal. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has ordered his military to thoroughly annihilate South Korea and the United States if they initiate a military confrontation and another round of bellicose rhetoric targeting Seoul and Washington. The two allies ramped up military and political cooperation in 2023 as North Korea conducted a record number of weapons tests, including a new solid fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, and put its first spy satellite into orbit. And so, what does this all mean? Okay, well, once again, here you have a situation where the West and its Western allies love to move in regions and parts of the world where their adversaries slash enemies reside. And so the United States, because of their relationship with South Korea, Kim Jong-un feels like they have been turning South Korea into one big US military base. And so it's the same conflict as it relates to the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Here you have the West and its allies trying to position itself so close to Russia, and it poses a security risk. It poses a military threat. And so here you have these countries responding to what is, I would say, nothing short of the United States and its Western allies bullying the world. It's flat out bullying, because you have adversaries, you have issues with people, and rather than to settle or fix those problems, all you'll do is just strategically move yourself into different positions as to be able to attack. So, you know, solving a problem, having peace is not necessarily on the agenda. Because if it was on the agenda, then you wouldn't strategically move yourself in positions where you know it would be very problematic for you and your adversaries. Okay, so right now I'm on a YouTube platform on a page called Let the Quran Speak. It got about 326,000 subscribers. So I advise you guys to go check this channel out. It's called Let the Quran Speak. And as you see in the title, what is Shia Islam? And so I wanted to give you guys some understanding first about the differences between Shia Muslims, Shiite Muslims, and Sunni Muslims. Now, there are differences and there are similarities. But for me, and this was new to me, I did not have an understanding of the split or where the conflict between Sunnis and Shiites derive from. And so this should give you guys some context and a clear understanding of not only why there are Shiites and Sunni Muslims, but where they differentiate, and also where they have similarities. So I'm going to show you some of this video, and hopefully you'll have a clear understanding after watching it.
Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm here with Sayyid Ali Imran. He is a Shia scholar. He studied in Iran for many years, and he's here with us. He's an instructor at Mizan Institute, here with us to speak to us about Shia Islam. Sayyid Ali Imran, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you're here. We've had a lot of conversations on Let the Quran Speak about realizing that, we're speaking about Islam, but we're speaking from the perspective of Sunni Islam, the majority perspective. And we realize we really need to bring the Shia perspective onto the show. So That's why you're here, and
Thank you.
hopefully this is the
So now, when she says that we're speaking from the majority, as it relates to the Muslim population globally, there are approximately 90% or 80 to 85% to 90% Sunni Muslims in the world. And there are about 15 to 10% Shiite Muslims in the world in its entirety. So now that should give you some context about the the large scale of differences in the populations. You understand? The majority of the Muslim world is Sunni Muslims, and there's a small percentage that are Shiite Muslims.
beginning of many conversations that we will have, and we hope to open up this space to more Shia scholars as well.
Inshallah. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about Shia Islam.
So Shi'i Islam is essentially we're Muslims, and we believe in the Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, in the oneness of Allah, in the Quran, and the finality of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But there's a difference of opinion that we have, which is that we believe that after the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that there was a contention on the leadership as to who will lead the Muslim Ummah after the demise of the Holy Prophet. And essentially, Shia are those Muslims who believe.
So now, if you listen to what he just said, there's a clear distinction that they share similarities as the belief up until the point of the death of Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him. So it is after this point that the conflict begins. So it should be understood that there's really no conflict until the point of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, until the Prophet passes away. At this point, and only at this point, there begins the conflict.
Believe that after the demise of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that this leadership had to be, was given essentially to his cousin and son-in-law, Imam Ali alayhi salam. And essentially, Shias are, we believe that this leadership was given to the Imam Ali, by the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and by extension, it is a divine appointment by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. And we believe that this individual, meaning Imam Ali alayhi salam, and then his lineage, meaning his two sons, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and imams from the lineage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So we have 12 imams that we believe in, who are all divinely appointed individuals who are responsible for the political guidance of the ummah, and as well as the spiritual guidance of the ummah. So that's the crux of our belief and where we differ from the Ahlul Sunnah essentially.
That's a beautiful and very.
So now, what he's basically explaining is they don't differentiate so much from each other. But like I said, there's an issue as it relates to the successor of the Prophet Muhammad. So the Prophet Muhammad passes away, peace and blessings be upon him. And the community comes together and they're trying to figure out who is going to succeed him. Now, there's one group that believes that it should be those of his lineage, those his relatives. So there's that part, and those who believe that the only ones that should succeed the prophet should be those of his lineage, which would make it divine. And then on the other side, you have those that believe that the successor of the prophet should just be those who are most knowledgeable, one who is most knowledgeable should be the one who succeeds the prophet. So now this is the issue as it relates to who they want to choose as their leader. Now there's a book called the I don't want to mispronounce this book. So I'm going to actually look for the name of the book right now. But it's called Biographies of the Rightly Guided Caliphs. Now, this story in this book, it details the four caliphs that were companions to the Prophet Muhammad. Now, these four caliphs, these are the individuals that they were trying to decide who would succeed the Prophet Muhammad. Now, on one side, you have a direct relative to the Prophet Muhammad, which is the Ali individual that this man is speaking of, which the Shiites follow, and who the Shiites believe is the true successor of the Prophet Muhammad. And then on the other side, you have the companion Abu, who the other side believes is this or should be the successor of the Prophet Muhammad. He was notably the closest companion to the Prophet Muhammad. And so this here lies the discrepancy.
Very concise summary of Shiism. Thank you for that. Can you tell me a little bit about how many Shia Muslims there are in Canada, and then maybe we can extend that to the world?
So I don't have any exact stats on me, but I inquired, some local scholars and some certain academics here in Toronto, and the number that I was given is around 150 to 200 Shia Muslims in Canada.
Okay.
And globally, we probably comprise around 15 to 20% of the Muslim world. So it's a pretty significant amount. And majority of the Shias that you will find are in countries like Iran, which is predominantly Shia, in Iraq, and there's a huge population of Shias in Pakistan, India, Lebanon, Bahrain, and interestingly, there's a significant population of Shias even in Saudi Arabia, actually in the eastern regions of Saudi Arabia. Some statistics say around 35 to 40% of the population of Saudi Arabia is also Shia. So we comprise pretty significant.
And another thing that I want you guys to also pay attention to, I learned about paying attention to the subtleties from Minister Louis Farrakhan many years ago. And so I like to look at the details of things. But if you notice, not just the regions of where most of the Shiite Muslims live, reside, come from, but what you'll also realize is that these are also the places that are adversarial to the United States of America and its Western allies.
Significant amount of the Muslim population. Yeah.
So, Sayyid Ali, you've spoken about given us a summary of what Shiism is. So, what about, in comparison to Sunni Islam, what are the similarities, and what would you say are, let's talk about the similarities first. And you sort of touched on that, right? I mean, we believe in God, and we have the same beliefs. Yeah. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So look, the similarities, as I mentioned, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the oneness of Allah. Essentially all the fundamental things that that make you a Muslim, oneness of Allah, Tawheed, Nubuwwah, prophethood, the finality of the last messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Quran as the final book of Allah, and as well as many of the acts of worship, for example, the salat, the psalm, the zakat, the hajj, and these are all obligatory, just like the Ahlul Sunnah believe. We also believe they're all obligatory duties that can become obligatory upon you given the certain right conditions and circumstances. So these are.
So notice that he's pointing out there is a large amount of similarities. There are more similarities than there are differences. And you will see that as he continues to speak. But I want you to pay attention to that, because the perspective from the Western world is that Shiites and Sunnis are so vastly different. They're so they believe in so many different things, and they're just so different. But that's not actually true. They actually hold many similarities, and their differences are only but a few.
Are essentially the same. There's no differences. There's no difference over here, but the differences emerge in the details of some of these discussions. So, for example, one of the major difference I would say between the Shia and the Sunni is how we approach some of these topics. For example, the Shia are, in some sense, very similar to the Mu'tazilis that used to, exist, in the Muslim communities in the past.
So they emphasize reason then.
Exactly, reason, rationality, and we have that approach when we approach theology, when we approach even law, we give that a lot of priority. So, for example, if based on the intellect we have arrived at a conclusion which is certain, we're certain about this, we will find no problem in reinterpreting an ayah or a narration and giving it a figurative interpretation, for example, or an allegorical interpretation. We don't have any issue with that. We believe it is justified at that point. So there's a difference in approach to many of these discussions. And secondly, many other differences exist in the in the legal aspect. So, for example, yes, salat is wajib. We all believe it's wajib and obligatory, but perhaps some of the details differ. But even these differences, I will try to understand them very similarly to how the Ahlul Sunnah have differences in their school of thoughts. So in their different school of thoughts in fiqh, in law, I think it's better to understand even these differences in that light, that the jurisprudential differences that we have. For example, we believe that salat has to be done while your arms are to your side and not folded. Well, okay, even amongst the Ahlul Sunnah, some jurists in the past held this position, and there's a mutual understanding.
So there's a minor difference that he just pointed out. Sunni Muslims pray with their arms folded, and Shiite Muslims pray with their arms to their sides.
Understanding that this is an ijtihad that is taking place. This is an ijtihad on the sources, on the narrations, or on the Quran, and these opinions are being arrived and derived, arrived at essentially. So I'm saying even these differences that exist, we can look at it in a positive light. These are not something that we should use as a point of contention and mistrust with one another.
Can you explain the prayer? Because this is something that Sunni Muslims always bring up. They pray 3 times a day and we pray 5 times a day. Can you explain what that's about?
So we have 5 prayers, just like all Muslims. You have the Fajr, you have the Zuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. There is a discussion in...
So now I want you to understand, because he's about to break down the differences, but I want you to understand what he just said. He has just recognized that 5 prayers are obligatory. So he does not denounce that. He does not deny that. So he admits that 5 prayers are obligatory. But I want you to continue listening to the distinction in what he says.
In law, that can you combine the Zuhr and the Asr and the Maghrib and the Isha? And the Ahlul Sunnah also have this discussion, and they allow for it in certain circumstances, as far as I'm aware. The Shia also allow for it, but it has become a custom in our tradition to combine the Zuhr and the Asr and as well as the Maghrib and Isha. But there's no problem in us separating these prayers and praying them at their allocated time. But as a convenience, as a community, we find it convenient to pray it together. For example, if we are working, for us it's very convenient. If in Zuhr time, if you want to pray at the work at your office, well, sometimes 5 p.m. you have to get home, you might miss Asr. Well, you can pray at work. You have your Zuhr and Asr is essentially covered. Or for example, when you have long nights, and then your Maghrib may be at a certain time, but Isha will come very, very late. Well, as a convenience, we are allowed to combine these prayers and pray Maghrib and Isha together. So it's not that we pray 3 times a day. No, we're praying 5 salats, which are obligatory. But yes, we often combine the Zuhr and the Asr, and we combine the Maghrib and Isha as well.
So what about Sayyid Ali?
And so I'm going to stop it right there, guys. that should give you guys a clear distinction of the differences and the similarities between Shiites and Sunni Muslims. Like I said, if you guys want to check this video out, you can go to YouTube and you can go to these guys' channel and you can watch the video in its entirety. And so the reason why I wanted to play this is because, like I said, there are differences. There are many differences, but there are also many similarities. And the similarities outweigh the differences. You understand? The differences are minute in my for me, the differences are minute as it relates to the whole. And so if this has brought you any insight into this world, if this is made you more knowledgeable, then I'm glad that I could do that for you. But like I said, this should give you some understanding about why Shiite Muslims are Shiite Muslims and why Sunni Muslims are Sunni Muslims. Okay, so I wanted to give you guys exactly where to go to receive this information. And so the book is called Biographies of the Rightly Guided Caliph. And so this book is about close to 500 pages long. And so this book is about the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. May peace and blessings be upon him. And so in this book, you'll get to understand, it's a clear understanding and a distinction of the history of the Muslim world. Now, you have the Prophet Muhammad, you have the Quran, and you have the Prophet Muhammad, which you already know about. But this book right here speaks about the companions. And this speaks about the stories that occurred after the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad's death. So you want to read these stories so that you can have a clear understanding of what shaped the Muslim world. All right, peoples. So drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about these stories. Did you know about any of these events? How does this make you feel? Drop a comment in the comment section. Always remember, stay vigilant, stay safe, peace.